Welcome to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling, the show about governments and innovation. With each episode, we bring you a person and a topic that is part of this larger concept of how countries and regions can create economic advantage by investing in innovation. Our theme song is by New Orleans jazz icon Leroy Jones, our editor Chris Elliott. I hope you enjoy this and other episodes. We've discussed science and tech policy in this podcast before, most recently in the episode The Future of Transatlantic Relations in Deep Tech with Milja Kalliosaari, Government Relations Manager at Finland's IQM Quantum Computers. Then with Christina Willis, Director of Government Affairs with Colorado's quantum company Inflection, in her interview When Scientists and Policymakers Speak the Same Language. And earlier in 2024 with Dr. Bob Suter on why the quantum industry needs an Apollo program. Today, in January 2025, as the United States is entering a second term with President Trump, I wanted to continue on this extremely important topic, important both for Europe and for the US. I was fascinated to read this article that's called Technology Adoption Should Be a Key Metric for US Science and Engineering Policy by Tanya Ramond. Tanya Ramond is the founder and CEO of Sapienne Consulting, a firm dedicated to helping companies with commercialization strategy in deep tech areas such as aerospace, quantum, photonics, clean tech, and more. You may remember her from our interview 2 years ago in Season 2, Episode 4, Turning Deep Tech into Sellable Products. It's so good to have you back at Deep Pockets, Tanya.
Thank you, Petra. It's great to be back.
So, excuse me, could you reintroduce yourself to those listeners who are not familiar with your work already? You are the founder and CEO of your company, but how did you get there? What is your career journey?
Yeah, thank you, Petra. I would call my career journey double layered. I started out extremely technical, completing a PhD and postdoc in quantum physics, then 10 years at what was at the time Ball Aerospace in product development and technical management of internal R&D, research and development programs, and new business development. Towards the end of my time there, I decided against staying at a big company my entire career. I wanted to try new things, and transitioned on to a series of small and startup companies working with aerospace and quantum technologies. However, at the time of this career inflection, my interests started to change. The story I like to tell is this one. At the end of my tenure at Ball, I was called in to lead a team of engineers in an internal R&D project. The objective was essentially to, let's say, build me a widget. And in this case, the widget was a LiDAR. I said, okay, great. I know the team. We've worked together before to do something similar. I'm sure we can get it done. We went off and talked about what exactly to build, but came up with many questions like, who wants this? Why do they want it from us? Why do they not want it from someone else? How will they use it? How much will they pay for it? How much will they not pay for it? And all these questions were top of mind because from the engineer standpoint, these answers drove major design decisions. So, for example, do we shell out for the top-of-the-line laser because that's the only way we get the required data products, or does a middle-of-the-line laser work just fine? This all drives cost, schedule, risk, and complexity. But the interesting thing is that when I posed these questions, I got no responses, no guidance. The guidance was just not there. And I couldn't articulate it at the time, but that did not sit well with me. It seemed like an extraordinary, inefficient use of time and money and engineering talent to build something without having done the homework needed to build a business case. There had to be a better way, and this search for answers became my career fuel from then on. I went on to earn an MBA. I dove into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, taught myself product management, and my company roles morphed into strategy and product roles. Today, I am an independent consultant at Sapienne Consulting, And I specialize in commercialization strategy for deep tech companies.
I love that journey. So let's dive directly into the topic of the day. This article, technology adoption should be a key metric for US science and engineering policy. So we had some background discussions, and in our conversations when we were preparing for this, you told me that you were reading the US National Science Board's policy brief called A Changed Science and Engineering Landscape. And as you were reading this, you mentioned the word anger. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, the anger did not come from what they said, but rather what they did not say. The 3 key points of the publication were this. The U.S. government supplies a very important foundation for R&D funding, but in terms of strictly dollars, business and private sector funds the majority of U.S. R&D. Second, China is our biggest competitor, as discussed, based on metrics like dollars spent in R&D and number of patents and the number of doctoral awards. And we need to beef up our STEM education efforts, specifically K through 12. I don't argue with any of these points. They're all correct and valid. However, the brief just stops there. The implication is that if we increase R&D funding, our number of patents or PhDs, and invigorate STEM education, then that is tantamount to technological leadership. This narrative ignores an elephant in the room, which is that it is not just the creation of technology, but the adoption of technology that wields potency.
And that really speaks to your story on your career path as well. I love it. So indeed, an important topic. Let's digest the arguments here. First, why do you think that technology adoption must be the metric for success, as opposed to, let's say, the patents you mentioned or the amount of VC funding going into startups?
Sure. Well, if you think about it from a pipeline perspective, we are ignoring the integrity of the pipeline and some pretty big leaks. So increasing STEM education, R&D funding, the number of doctorates, the number of patents, yes, they all contribute to bigger volume flowing through that pipeline without a doubt. But if that pipeline is leaky, you aren't going to get the desired effect at the end. Sticking with this metaphor, these leaks arise due to factors impeding technology adoption. And so what do I mean by that? I think the best description of technology adoption is given by Geoffrey Moore, as described in his seminal book called Crossing the Chasm. He discusses the palpable difference in mindset, which could be considered a valley of death, between those that would try out a new technology as an early adopter and more mainstream users who would buy a technology to solve a problem. If a technology stays with early adopters and cannot make the jump to mainstream buyers, generally speaking, adoption is hindered as the technology stays within the hands of a relatively small group of early adopters.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So in this article, your second argument is that we need more graduate level STEM workforce development. Tell us more about that.
Yes. Well, the stark reality is that only 1 in 10 PhDs end up as a professor. And the PhD glut is not something new. It's existed for decades. Furthermore, as a general rule, even though 9 out of 10 will not become a professor, PhDs are offered no support during their programs to explore non-academic jobs. And if they do, they're often haunted by feelings of, say, quitting science or selling out to work in industry. PhD career coaching is a necessity. Furthermore, many PhDs decide to pursue an entrepreneurial career path after their graduation. And universities tend to offer entrepreneurial education, but it's usually offered, on the side, and typically only if they know they want this path. However, if entrepreneurial success is part of technology adoption, entrepreneurial education needs to be better integrated into educational curriculum, starting earlier in the educational path.
Terrific. Yeah, good stuff. Let's move on to the startups. You say that in your article that startup success rates are unacceptably low. Yet, if you look at the amount of private investments that go into the US startups in these emerging technology sectors versus how much money startups in other parts of the world receive, the US is the envy of the world, and I can attest. I'm currently sitting in France, in Europe, and we're all envying the American startup VC funds. So if you're saying that even with the most money in the world, American startups need to step up in delivering great products, delivering success?
Yeah, well, the reality is that the vast majority of startups fail, no matter what country you're in. The often cited statistics are as high as 90%. The reasons for failure are many, but research shows that the majority of the time, the failure is traced to a lack of market need. Another way to say this is that it is not the difficulty of the technology or something fundamental to the science or technology that causes the failure. Again, it has to do with, quote, doing your homework. In other words, business strategy and business approaches. This is really good news because that is more controllable than, say, the laws of physics. We have many new entrepreneurial tools now, not just for startups, but also for those who are innovating in a corporate environment. I mean, decreasing the startup failure rate anywhere south of 90% seems like a blue ocean opportunity to increase technological adoption. I'll go back to that pipeline metaphor. If a large chunk of technological startups fail because of insufficient business due diligence, that is a leak in the pipeline we can patch.
So in this story, you're almost describing like a need for a product management type of role, aren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That was what I was experiencing was the absence of the function of product management. So as I went on in my career from there, as I said, I needed to find a better way. And in fact, there is a better way. It's not new. I did not invent it. This is a role that's very, very seasoned, and that's of the product manager. And it's not the same thing as product development. A product manager is that link between the customer, understanding their pain points, doing the research to really characterize them, and then bringing that understanding back internally to drive the engineering requirements that you need to build something. And these are the foot soldiers that you need to rely on to make that link and make sure that you're building something that solves an actual problem. I think there's a big role for technical product management. We could really beef that up, and that would be a great way to increase the technology adoption for the to shore up the pipeline for technology adoption.
Mm-hmm. To continue on that thought, you mentioned the build it and they will come mindset. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this is the corollary of, say, bringing a product to market without market need. It's exemplified in the story I told earlier when my team was instructed to build the widget without any context for who wants it and why that would drive the requirements for the design. Because we build it, obviously someone's going to buy it, right? We know that's not true. Customers are very happy to ignore a product that does not solve a problem for them. But especially for technical-minded folks, they're so ingrained in the technology, its beauties, its challenges, that it becomes all-encompassing. They are technology first, problem second. That mindset does not change organically. You have to have a deliberate effort to rewire that mindset in order to move to a customer-curious mindset that puts the problem that they're experiencing first and the solution second. Einstein famously said that if he had to solve a hard problem, he would spend 99% of the time thinking about the problem and 1% thinking about the solution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. My last question, politics and policy aside, leave us with something uplifting, either from your personal life or from your work in the intersection of science, policy, and business.
Yeah, no, I think this is really uplifting. I look at it as again, a blue ocean. Once we all start to see these pipeline leaks, because they are so big, even making modest improvements can yield big improvements overall in technology adoption and technology strength. Furthermore, these pipeline leaks are not unique to the U.S. China, I am sure, experiences the same. So if we can shore up the pipeline to technology adoption and impact, we have a leg up on the competition.
Mm-hmm. Shore up the pipeline. There you had it. This has been Tanya Ramond, the founder and CEO of Sapienne Consulting, discussing her recent article, Technology Adoption Should Be a Key Metric for US Science and Engineering Policy, which was published by Dynamic Tech Media, and I'll add the link in the show notes so you can go and read it yourself. Thank you so much for coming back to Deep Pockets, Tanya.
Oh, thank you, Petra. Thank you for having me back.
You've listened to Deep Pockets with Petra Söderling. To subscribe to content, please go to petrasöderling.com. The wonderful music you heard is by Leroy Jones, an iconic New Orleans Jazz Hall of Fame trumpetist. You can find this and other Leroy Jones tunes at your favorite online or offline music store. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and share our episodes. It means a lot to me and to my guests. Thank you.